Hello guys, and glad to have you on board again today. A quick shot about Ethereum, because we have quite a lot of things to update, whether that is those of you guys who are questioning the last session impressive upside move, or if you have longer term portfolio. I think today's episode is definitely going to be for everyone. So first things first, do we need to be worried about over speculation regarding Ethereum's short-term price action? Well, if you just zoom out a bit, of course you would say this seems a bit of a rough day, 10% might seem overextended and so on. So of course I hardly expect we're going to do it again today. These are the types of things we're going to take a few days to digest, or at least very likely will. Still, does that mean the move is over, that we overextended a rally, it's on the verge to crash? I definitely don't think it is, for multiple reasons. The first one being, I'm not going to say it all over again, but a few weeks ago I've recorded a video comparing Ethereum to Apple, saying of course these are definitely not the same things, but if we had to compare Ethereum to something that can eventually be compared to, that would be Apple back into the 2008 sessions, which means Apple back then was already a thing. It's just that it suffered the crash just like every asset did out of the 2008 crash, and basically the Apple's recovery has been quite similar to the one we've seen recently on ETH. And the thing is that, therefore, I have recorded that video back then to just give you a glimpse of what plan I would put into motion as long as things turned out to be similarly plotting as Apple back then, which turns out, god damn it, it's so similar. It happened exactly the way we thought. I said back then, if we have some kind of a rapid recovery, straight line stuff, and then if we see some kind of a weird hesitation right into the third range boundary territory, we're very likely going to extract out of these areas to the upside by a strong upside move, leading sooner or later to the all-time highs. Well, turns out yesterday's session is basically exactly part of my plan. So, like I said, as long as the plan is putting itself into the prices, I'll keep playing that game as long as I'm proven right. So yesterday's session, would I call it overextended, over-speculated rally, something that, definitely not. It was part of the goddamn plan. To tell me one thing, it is more led to supply. Okay, the problem we have right now is not over speculation. I tried as hard as possible to scroll over all of the YouTubers' videos and so on. Yes, of course, you still have the same old guys, moon boys, whatever, but I don't see over speculation like I thought would possibly be the case out of 10% moves. So there is not overexcitement right now. What I've seen instead is more like a consensus. It sounds a lot more like ETH has its own standards now. It's really into everyone's mouth, like the thing you get and you hold. I mean, you don't sell ETH, so if no one sells, then if the demand is maintained, then we have a supply shock. I think the major problem we have in ETH is the fact that money goes out of exchanges at a dangerous pace. We're seriously lacking of coins available as the demand seems to still be there. So, of course, supply, demand, lack of supply, maintain demand means prices rise higher. You know the drill. Does that mean this is rational pricing, whatever? I don't think that really is. Just like back then, prices of Apple were definitely not reflecting the actual reality back in the days. It was forecasts and expectations of what Apple could become in the future. And that's exactly what we see now. No one's pricing ETH as its current status. Everyone's pricing ETH 2.0, and the fact that no matter how, no matter what, even if there is better tech out there, just like it definitely was the case for Apple, people were willing to get Apple anyway. It was damn more expensive. Lots of things would have put a rational mind to go elsewhere. Still, everyone went for Apple. There was kind of a consensus. Same thing happens for ETH, and I've made that comparison back into the ETH to Apple comparison. So we're not going to say it all over again. So does that seem overextended out of yesterday? Well, sure thing it is. We're very less likely going to put an additional 10% day within the next few days. Probably going to digest pretty flat or slightly upside moves, and we're probably going to get another big move later on to go to all-time highs. And I'm not going to go over the intermediate cycles that I've been plotting into the Apple's comparison. Go out there if you need some more details. But to set the essentials, we're very likely going to get another range following the all-time highs testing. This range is very likely going to break these trend lines, so the next buying entry for me would be waiting for all-time highs to be set as a next confirmation level that I am in the true scenario. If it happens, I'm going to wait for the prices to retrace down to this trend line, which I'm going to trend follow very likely, or at least apply trend follow context if they show up signals, whatever. You know, I'm always price dependent. I never trade something because I feel like it will be that or this, okay? Always price and signal dependent. Then if it truly goes for a trend follow structure, we should get a straight upside move, normally reaching out to the one-to-one report of the previous range. So that should lead us into some kind of a 7K-ish territory. As of this area, we expect a strong potential reversal with a huge drop similar to 30% in Apple back then. So it can be very harsh, and in the memory it has been up and corrected in 2 days. So it's really a short-term opportunity for those who were patient enough, kind of liquidation for other leverage positions. So same old stuff. If you go down leverage positions on on ETH, thinking that no matter what, everyone's willing to buy, well, we very likely might expect some other 30% plus drops in the future, which means any leverage above 3 is going to get you wrecked. So please don't be dumb enough to go leverage position. Assets can bring some serious gains, so don't be greedy, please. Okay, that is the thing. So now for long-term portfolio exposition like I am, something has changed, at least it changed for me, and I would seriously recommend you to ask that question. If you were a long-term investment into ETH, meaning that you bought way, way earlier than the previous bottom, I mean, if you bought into 2019 or 2020's lows, well, you are into serious gains territory now. The thing is that, do we need to change the status? In my personal portfolio, I bought this upside cycle for cryptocurrencies as a buy and hold because I didn't know how long it would take to reactivate the trend. I didn't even know if a trend will reactivate, so really more like in a hold and wait and see type of approach. Of course, earlier this year, the trend reactivated quite severely, actually. Then we have experienced this huge crash, reaccumulation structure, well, redistribution, reaccumulation, and then, of course, we get to trying to reactivate the bull run. Of course, that needs going all-time high to validate again, but to be honest, everything suggests it's going to happen. Just not necessarily immediately, okay? Though, until then, speculative trading, you know the drill. As long as you are not sure of whatever's going to happen, you just can't expose leverage potential into these assets that can lose 30% of their value in a couple of days. All right. Though the thing is that out of leverage stuff, okay, so buy and holders, long-term exposition, huge gains in the pile, means you're safe. I mean, the prices I got in with ETH are never going to be offered again. So I know anyway I'm going to be profitable. The question is, where do I get out? So of course I've got the luxury to have a mindset in which I'm not willing to lose anything. I just can't lose anything. It's just, do I want to be more greedy, less greedy, still being down to earth? Okay, it's really not going moonboy territory stuff. Okay, clear mindset of a trader. The thing in here is that I think what happened now, and if it turns out to confirm within the next few weeks to go all-time highs and so on, so keep following the Apple's path. If it does, then to be honest, I think opening the Apple's path just gives me opportunity to extend the time scales I wanted for ETH. So those who follow me for a long time knows that anyway, I always thought I would be keeping the validator, the ETH validator, beyond this macro cycle, okay, which I expect to terminate late 2022, eventually early 23. Okay, so I had some kind of a plan to extend some of the coins beyond these territories. ETH was definitely the first one to be a candidate for this, but I wasn't 100% sure. As of what's happened yesterday, tend to really lead me to believe that this is kind of a confirmation. The confirmation I wanted. We're on the verge for a longer run for ETH, something that would definitely not terminate in 1 or 1.5 years. So in that perspective, what I decided to do now, of course, it might be subject to change. I'm like 99% convinced at the point. I still need some further down the road confirmation. But as long as it plays that game, I'm really questioning whether ETH can actually be called an altcoin anymore. I think now ETH no longer is such a thing. Back then, ETH was #1 altcoin, and there were plenty of other potential ETH killer, layer 1's alternative, layer 2 solutions on ETH itself. Well, let me tell you something, okay? Something has changed for me today in my asset management portfolio. I will, at least not until proven wrong, switch most of my ETH, and specifically the validator part, okay, into much longer term portfolio exposition, which means that was a plan, but I'm now fully confident about doing it. Portions of my ETH will be extended over this rally, even if I expect 50% price drops in between and so on, okay? Of course, I have some side ETH that I will eventually arbitrage or sell at that point, but there will be ETH I will sell. I won't sell and keep beyond. Which really leads me to ask a question that you guys should ask yourselves as well. Is ETH still an altcoin? In my personal opinion, and I've always pleaded for this, Bitcoin has its own liquidity pool. It's its own asset class, okay? Limited supply, 21 million, lots of coins being lost, and the value is expected anyway to increase as we print more and more fiat currency. So BTC has its own purpose. In my portfolio, I'll never ever sell a single of the Bitcoins I have for simple reasons. I haven't bought that many of them. I'm not speculating on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an insurance for a massive potential, but very less likely financial crash. Okay, so it's an insurance against out of control inflation and so on. So okay, so I'm not selling Bitcoins. It's just if ever currency goes really out of control, which I don't think will, at least not now, well, BTC will be my insurance because people will very likely jump into these assets as a replacement. Okay, so it is an insurance, not selling any of my Bitcoins. Now, like I said, I think ETH officially has its own asset class, the smart contract stuff. So what I'm really questioning now is what are all the damn ETH killer going to turn out to be in the future? Because I hardly think they will have room. There's maybe room for one competitor, and I think Cardano is very likely going to be. Otherwise, I'm really questioning the probabilities for other ETH killer so-called stuff to actually succeed. Because I think ETH today just sent us the message. No matter what capitalization it has, no matter how big it is, there is a supply shock. The thing is that, just like Apple back then, people demand for it, even if it's definitely overpriced to what the current project status is. People pay for the future. And as the future is expected, as long as it's delivered, and I definitely don't think ETH will disappoint, as long as the future is delivered, even if it's a bit delayed, people still ask for it. And those who own it simply say, and there is quite a consensus, if you have ETH, don't sell it. So I'm really concerned about the fact that we're going to get a supply shock. We already probably have, and yesterday's 10% day seems to suggest it is. Just look at the volume, barely perceivable. So it's not a staggering volume we've had yesterday. Still, it is a significant move to the upside, leading me to believe that we can see the data. A lot of ETH are leaving exchanges as the demand keeps itself to a sustained level. Sustained demand, limited supply creates a supply shock. And that's the reason why I think simply ETH, even if it's not necessarily the best tech out there, feels like it turned out to be the consensus over markets investment portfolios. And in that perspective, I think ETH now deserves its own asset class. ETH is by itself an asset class. Also leading me to believe that another asset class is whatever is ETH layer 2s, like say Matic, lots of things, all of ETH dependent stuff like Link is definitely connected to ETH. Lots of things like that I think are a separate asset class building itself like a baby of ETH. As ETH has risen to its independent state, all of layer 2s and scaling solutions for ETH have its own independent liquidity pocket, I call it that way. So leading me to believe now that we have still other altcoins, whether they are direct altcoin competitor to ETH, okay, which I think the ETH killer will definitely probably not succeed, but just a couple of them. Don't know which ones, okay? And all other alternate solutions, okay? So either they are faster than ETH, which is probably Solana's targets. Either they are they have other purposes, like I think Atom, which will bring interoperabilities and stuff like that. But I think any other supposedly ETH killer will have a lot of troubles, okay? So pay attention to this. Either you have a specifically targeted blockchain that will serve a specific case and use, Otherwise, general public blockchain stuff, ETH killers so-called, I think will have a rough path down the future. But that's a topic for another day. The other and final question I'm willing to ask you guys today, and I wish you will ask it yourself as well, if altcoins are no longer depending from ETH, who's going to trigger the next alt season? That's really an interesting question. Because to be honest, I still don't have the answer, and that's a topic I'm really going to dig into within the next few days and weeks. Because like I said, yesterday's message, among the general mistakes I've seen here and there into YouTube, are not the usual moon boys calling for irrational targets. I've seen rarely of them recently, actually. But what I've seen instead is lots of people calling for the alt season to come, because ETH has popped up, so alts will follow. Like I said, ETH is now not necessarily a good sign for other altcoins. Could actually be a bad sign, but more importantly, if there is such a thing as an alt season, it will not be structured the same way as it did back then. And most importantly, there will probably be a leader, just like there was back then with ETH. But the question is, who's it going to be? So who do we need to look for in order to potentially have some early signs of an alt season to trigger? Well, I'll give you my potential candidates. Of course, early speculation. I'll dig into, find some other data to support whether this is true or false, give you the price action I'm expecting to see to confirm, whatever. That will be a topic I'll dig into in another video. But as of right now, not spoiler alert, of course, okay, no speculation stuff. But I intend to reduce the assets I'm going to scroll for these potentials to the top 10. I'm not going to include Solana because it just got entered into the top 10 recently, and I would like it to stabilize its value before considering it actually settled for now into the top 10 and durably, which I think it probably will, but I need further proof of that. So I'm going to exclude Solana from the top 10, which leads me with Cardano, Ripple, BNB, and I would stick with these. So I would say I'm particularly looking at these three now, questioning who might be the triggering asset for the alt season. To be honest, I don't think Cardano is an asset that will do the job because it is a direct competitor to ETH. And to be honest, I think Cardano might have its own liquidity pool being ETH top 1 competitor. Okay, so like we stated, I think these ones have interoperability as being like the leader and its leader opponent, like Apple and Microsoft. Okay, so I think they have their own interdependency, but that's of course speculative, though this needs to be proven down the future. Okay, so that leaves me with Binance and Ripple. And I'm really questioning which one of these two will eventually get to trigger the alt season if we have such a thing. So looking at the price action of these two, I'm really thinking that I've got it right. Because as you can see, Ripple is triggering quite an interesting signal recently into a very tough area. Is it going to succeed, yes or no? And if it does, is it going to bring on board all of the other altcoins into an upside move potential? If that's BNB, which sounds a lot reasonable to me as well, same condition, ranging recently, willing to eventually pop up to all-time highs. And which one of these two will be? Are they going to trigger all together? I don't know, but these are the assets I'm carefully looking at right now. Binance would be a definitely good representation of forthcoming alt season potential, because I mean it's been under pressure recently, lots of governmental pressure over Bitcoin, over Binance and exchanges in general. But as of right now, exchanges is still where most of the liquidity is traded. So I think it makes reasonable sense to consider that Binance might be a good reference to be the potential leader for the next alt season, considering that ETH now no longer is an altcoin, is its own stuff. Out of everything else, no one's going to kill ETH. The ETH killer are probably way too outdated now. And even though ETH is not the best tech out there, it's probably way, way ahead in terms of market participation, project developments, and so on. So I think now, more than ever, it needs to be proven right in the future and within the next few days and weeks. But I think ETH no longer stands as being an altcoin. And probably BNB, I suspect, will be the next alt leader for alt seasons and future cycles of alt dominance versus Bitcoin and ETH. See you guys into the next video in which we'll eventually dig deeper into this perspective. Bye guys.